Bardstown, Kentucky, the gateway to the state's famed Bourbon Trail, you'll find four men who know a little something about what it means to serve. They met through their careers and bonded over their love of country and bourbon. Mike Trott with the Air Force and CIA.
My father was in the Army, was in the Korean War, and my grandfather was in the First World War, too. So it was just kind of a natural progression of thought that one day I would serve in the military.
Rick Franco, who spent his childhood abroad before joining the Marines.
It was the formation of me wanting to serve my country.
R.J. Casey's dad was a fighter pilot, inspiring him to enlist.
I got my start in Special Forces, and they were referred to as Green Berets.
And Harold Underdown, a Tier 1 Navy SEAL for years.
It really does open your eyes. When you deploy in other countries, you learn so much, right?
Four men who chose to blend their military backgrounds into something to honor fellow service members, a bourbon called Four Branches that admittedly took their wives and families by surprise.
You're going to start a what company? A bourbon company?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And what did you tell them?
Yeah, I got this great idea, honey. This is what I want to do. And she looked at me like I had not one head, but three heads.
But the venture was always about more than developing their own recipe for a time-honored drink.
We hear stories, Sam. Every time we sit down at a table and pour a glass, it started here in these barrels.
Their desire to distill also comes from wanting a safe space for discussing pain and sacrifice.
Most of the time, when you hear voices in your head, don't listen to them. They're probably not good,
yeah.
But every now and then, there's a voice that makes sense. And this voice said, do a barrel bourbon for the guys in my old unit.
Rick's close friend he recruited to the CIA, Greg Wright Jr., years later becoming an inspiration for Four Branches.
December 7th, 2005, Greg did his first mission ever for the agency. Day one, night one out the wire. He saved everyone's life. Greg didn't come home. And I had to fly to bring him home. And then I had to answer to friends and family for the classified mission. And so it meant a lot to give back to the unsung shadows and to honor those warriors. And that's why this started.
He called up Mike, who was moved by the power of honoring what he said was 1,000 Gregs out there.
There's an Englishman who wrote a poem about not drinking to forget. And that just kind of hit home. To me, people do drink to forget, so let's sip to remember instead.
All four had a brief pause about producing a product that at times has been used as an escape for veterans. They also saw an opportunity to face problems head-on together.
Is it in some ways a permission to have these difficult conversations with people that you want to connect with?
I'd say if you don't have those conversations out loud, somebody's going to have them in private, and that voice is not always the healthiest thing to listen to. But when you're around your friends and you're sipping to remember, it might start with tears, but guys like us, we can't help but start laughing about the good times.
Our bourbon, we said this from day one. If we're going to raise a glass to a fallen, it's got to be good bourbon.
So this group of bourbon badasses tapped Steve Nally, a master distiller with almost 50 years of bourbon making experience, to craft a version with 4 ingredients, not the usual 3.
Why is that so rare?
Historically, it's been 3-grain bourbons. The 4th grain adds a complexity to the whole process. The 4th grain was introduced to it to give it a roundness.
After seeing how it was made, and with the poignancy of the purpose, we had to give Four Branches a try.
So you get a little bit of that caramel, the confection, the caramel, the vanilla, a little burnt orange.
To remember.
To remember.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Cheers, boys.
Nice. Cheers.
So part of Four Branches' mission is giving back, obviously, to the veteran community. They dedicate a portion of their sales to a variety of different nonprofit organizations that benefit veterans, including the Third Option Foundation and the CIA Officers Memorial Foundation. They also donate, guys, bottles of bourbon to be auctioned off at charity events. Those bottles have raised more than $400,000 and counting. And of course, we could not return from the Bourbon Trail without some bourbon to try for everybody to sit in honor of veterans.
Sam, really quickly, while we sip, explain the actual label on the front too, because that's significant as well.
It's super fascinating, Craig. Thank you for asking about this. So this 4 is accentuated to represent these 4 different branches. You have the Army, which is the oldest, in the foundation on the bottom. This mast right here is the Navy. The spear is the Marines. And then for the Air Force, the sky overhead, the canopy, which really has symbolic meaning beyond just obviously the number 4.
Well
Craig
done,
is
Sam.
something of a bourbon expert, so you can let us know.
I was fortunate to taste it a few months ago, and I'm not just saying this because we just featured them. Sam. It's fantastic bourbon. This is their founder's blend.
Cheers.
To our vets.
To our vets.
To our vets.
Salute you.
Well done, Sam.
Good.
What's up next? Oda Cap.
It's 8:45 a.m. somewhere.